Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you 5 different methods to get that all-important 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Is it essential that you get 1/4 of an inch every time? It's not essential that you get 1/4 of an inch every time, but it is essential that all of your seams are the same measurement. So if you're 1/8 of an inch over on each of your seams, it doesn't really matter so long as every seam is the same. But it should be 1/4 of an inch on quilting. So let's try and get 1/4 of an inch if we can, or as close to that 1/4 of an inch that we can get. And let's be consistent. So I'm going to show you my 5 different methods that I know of, and then you can work out which one's for you. You could practice a little bit on all of them and see which works best for you. So let's get started.
The first method is to draw a line where we're going to sew. So first put your pieces together and then draw a line 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Then if you like, you can pin your pieces together to hold them in place, although it's not always necessary with small pieces of fabric. Then at your sewing machine, sew together, sewing along the line that you've just drawn, but you need to keep just to the right hand side of the line. Don't cross the line to the left, otherwise you will be taking more than your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm joining 3 4.5 inch squares together so that when we finish doing the seam allowances we should end up with a 4-inch square in the middle, because we've taken 1/4 of an inch out for each of the seam allowance. So I'm just pinning my second piece together and then I'm going to draw my 1/4 of an inch line on it. Then at your sewing machine, sew, taking your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance by following the line that you've drawn on your fabric. I'm using a friction pen here, by the way, so I can later iron it off. But you could just use a pencil because nobody's ever going to see this line because it's on the inside of your seam. Next, set your seams and then in this case press towards the darker fabric. Once you've set your seams, just finger press first and then press with a nice hot iron on both of the seams. Just to check, I'm going to measure to see that it is exactly 4 inches. And as you can see, I've started at the 1 inch, not at the 0, and it goes to 5, which makes it 4 inches. And that is expected, that should work out exactly right. The next method is a magnetic seam guide, which it has a magnet on it and you attach it to your machine's foot plate using the guides on the foot plate, which works quite well for bigger seams. But when you come down to the 1/4 of an inch, on my machine you only have a little bit of metal to attach it to, and it can move quite easily, but we're going to go ahead and use it anyway. But before we do, we're going to check that our needle will be in the correct position. To do this, take a piece of card. I'm just using an A4 piece of card and I'm going to draw a 1/4 of an inch line across the top. So I'm measuring from the top edge of the piece of card 1/4 of an inch down using my ruler. There's my 1/4 of an inch line, and then I can use this on my sewing machine to check that my needle will go down in the right place. So we're imagining that it's a piece of fabric and it's butted up against our seam guide, and we're just going to move our needle, as you saw me do there, until it's in the right position to sew our 1/4 of an inch seam. And there we are, that's about right. Sew your seams together using the magnet as a guide. The edge of your fabric runs along the edge of the seam guide, keeping your seams nice and straight and hopefully at 1/4 of an inch. Set your seams and press your fabric and we'll check to see if we've got our 1/4 of an inch seam allowance right. So I'm going to measure again from the 1 to the 5, and there we are, exactly 4 inches. The next method is to use a piece of tape on your markings on your sewing machine so that you've got a nice straight line to follow. So find your 1/4 of an inch mark on your sewing machine. Mine really isn't very clear on my sewing machine, to be honest. You've got your 1/8, you've got your 3/8, and then your 1/4 of an inch is just in between. If I use this method, I make my tape about 4 inches long. When your tape is in place on the 1/4 of an inch line, you can either use the same method as we used before by drawing a 1/4 of an inch line on a piece of card and butting that up against your tape, or you can use this method, which is to use your ruler. A ruler with a 1/4 inch mark on it. You can just put that up against your tape, gently, very gently, lower your needle and see if it's on or in line with the 1/4 inch. If it's not, raise it a little bit and move it to the left or right. Gently lower the needle using the hand wheel. Only let it gently make contact with the ruler. When you're satisfied your needle is in the right position, you can start sewing, using your piece of tape as a guide to keep your fabric going in a nice straight line, and hopefully you should get a 1/4 inch. So let's measure again to make sure. Again, I'll start measuring at the 1 and go across to the 5 hopefully, which should give us 4 inches. And there we are, 4 inches across. And the next method is to use a special 1/4 inch foot. So I'm just going to put this on my sewing machine, and using the card with the 1/4 inch seam allowance drawn on it, I'm going to put it under my presser foot, right up against the edge of my presser foot, and just move my needle into the correct position so that my needle hits the line when lowered, and that will give me my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here is a close-up of my presser foot, and I don't know whether you can see, but there is only a very small little hole for the needle to go into anyway, so you don't have much room to manoeuvre. Sew your 1/4 inch seam, keeping that guide to the side of your fabric, running your fabric along the guide at the side of your presser foot, and you should be able to keep your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Set and press the seams, and then we can check to see if this one's worked out. Sorry, I only caught the top half of this, but you can just see that I've measured again from the 1 inch to the 5 inch, which means that it measures 4 inches across. And my final method is to just use the edge of a standard presser foot, and we're going to start by lining the edge of our presser foot up with the edge of the card that we were using before with our 1/4 inch seam allowance marked on it, and we're going to use our stitch width dial to move our needle across until our needle is in line with that line. At the moment it's far too far over towards the left, so I need to move my the needle over to the right as I have, and it's in line with my 1/4 inch line on my paper or card, sorry. Now you can use the edge of your presser foot as a guide, so you need to get the side of your presser foot in line with the edge of your fabric, and just follow the edge of your fabric along with the edge of your presser foot, and you should get a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this method should be the easiest because your fabric is in contact with both sides of your feed dogs. If you use a special 1/4 inch presser foot, like you can see here, you will see that only one side of the feed dogs will be in contact with your fabric. In this case, it's paper, but if it was fabric, it would be the same. But with your standard presser foot, your fabric will be in contact with both of the feed dogs. In order for this to work on my sewing machine, my stitch width had to be set as far over to the right as it could possibly be, which was number 5 in my case. And after pressing, and again measuring from 1 to 5, you'll see that it measures 4 inches across, as it should do.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, could you please subscribe to my channel? Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.